So with the holiday season upon us and perhaps the busiest shopping month of the year coming up, it seemed only fitting to create a landscape photography holiday gift guide buying video, but with an emphasis on the photography gear that I purchased over the last couple of years that didn't quite materialize the way I had originally anticipated it would. And this video is not meant to be a knock on any of these specific brands, as each of these brands is absolutely fantastic in their own right. These are just pieces of gear that didn't quite solve the problem I had originally hoped it would, or these are things that I just didn't end up using a fraction of the amount of time as I thought I would when I first purchased them. And I rated each of these pieces of gear in order of price, so item number one is by far the most expensive of the bunch. So to jump right into it without further ado, coming in at number 7 is the UV filter. And I think these are very common, especially for those that are first getting into photography, to purchase a UV filter. I know I've purchased a couple of different variations of them, and they usually range anywhere from, on the cheap end, maybe $20, and on the more expensive end, maybe $50 or $60. But the purpose here, or the idea, is to block damaging ultraviolet rays from the sun from entering your lens or camera and ultimately damaging them. I've never had any issues with that, and I'm very aware with how much glass I stack on the end of my lenses, so how many filters I stack on there, because I believe every time you add a piece of glass on the end of your lens, it will slowly degrade the overall image quality. So I'm very aware how many I put on there. And usually if I'm ever putting a filter on my lens, it's going to be a circular polarizer, and it is never going to be an ultraviolet filter. So I would probably skip these if you're a beginner and you're trying to figure out ways to protect your camera. I think there's probably a lot better ways to do that. I've never had an issue with any type of damage from UV light entering my lens or my camera. So I'd probably skip that. And coming in at number 6 is this. This is a Peak Design rain cover. I believe I spent $39.95 on this, and I thought it was so cool. I love the way that it kind of broke down into this tiny little package right here. You can just put it in the side of your bag in a pocket. But if you kind of open it up, if it's raining, and it fits your camera like a glove, it sits right over your camera body and your lens right there. And you could flip this up and you could continue shooting in the rain because there was this little hood here. And on paper, it all seemed fantastic. But then when I got it and I tried to use it on location a couple times, it was just so fiddly to try and get on my camera. I spent multiple minutes trying to do it while rain was falling all over my camera. And I found that just using a cheap little 10-cent shower cap is probably the best overall solution for keeping rain off of your camera. It is substantially cheaper than $39.95, much easier to put on, and this just almost felt like it was a little bit over-engineered. I think it was a great idea, but it was just a little bit too much of a process for my liking. Now, coming in at number 5, and this is a little bit of a contentious topic, but it's these remote shutter releases. And I think that there's two different types of photographers out there, those that use a remote shutter release and those that don't. I think I've spent maybe $30 or $40 on this one, and I think this one was maybe $50 or $60. So they range anywhere from maybe $40 or $60 usually. But I usually just use a 2-second timer all the time. And I used to only pull these out when I was shooting seascapes, because I wanted to be able to time a wave perfectly and be able to hit this button without hitting the 2-second timer and having to wait 2 seconds. But now I just put it on burst mode. Usually hit the shutter release on my camera, or the shutter button, and then it'll take maybe 5 or 7 images as the wave is coming in and as the wave is pulling back out. I would just be being able to capture that entire sequence. So I really have no use for these anymore. I would just assume not spend the money on these. You don't have to carry them around. You don't have to fiddle with them when you're on location. I always use an L bracket, and these things are kind of funny because you have to move one side of your L bracket out from your camera a lot of times to be able to plug these in, and it was just something that I didn't feel like messing with anymore. So I have a remote shutter release on my list of things that I never use anymore. Now, coming in at number 4 is this right here. This is a Moment phone lens. I think this was the ultra wide lens, and it definitely, oh, here it is right there, 18 millimeters, and it definitely widened the field of view. But most cameras today come with a wide angle lens on there, and this really didn't improve the image quality at all, at least nothing that I really noticed. I think the quality of images coming out of phones today is absolutely fantastic, and I don't think that this really increased it much at all. It's a pretty heavy lens, and you had to have this special phone case to go over your phone to lock this in, and it was just a lot to mess around with, to not really see much of an increase in image quality. And I actually spent $120 on this a couple years ago. I do think this is on sale now though for $65.95. So you can get it for a little bit cheaper. Well, actually, that's 50% off almost from what I paid for it, but I still don't think that this is a really a necessary piece of gear for a landscape or really any type of photographer. Now, coming in at number 3 is this. This is a Mindshift DSLR, I think holster they call it. And I spent $65.95 on this. And I think the execution of this is really good. It's got, you know, obviously, as you can tell, it's just got an area for your DSLR. It's got a pocket on the outside and a strap. And my thinking here was I could be able to carry just one thing, my camera and a lens, and just be able to go on location. And that was it, be able to have easy access to my camera. And if I carried a bag that didn't have room for a bunch of other stuff, then I would obviously be traveling lighter because I would have no more room to put anything else. But I found that I ended up just trying to pack this thing full of so many things that I felt were critical for a particular shoot, and I never had enough room. And I think I only used this once or twice, and it just didn't work out for me. So these types of kind of specialty bags, and I know the idea is to keep the weight down or keep the amount of things down that you're going to bring on location, but I think there is no substitute for a good camera bag. This is what I use. This is the Shimoda Action X30 that I'm using right now. Absolutely fantastic bag, but I think the importance of a great camera bag that can carry all the things that you need is of the utmost importance. Now, coming in at number 2 is this. This is a Joby GorillaPod. I spent $100 on this. And I was really sold on the idea that you can just wrap this thing around anything, a fence post, a branch of a tree, all kinds of places that you couldn't get your tripod. And I thought that was cool. I love the fact of how small and compact it was. But in all honesty, I've never attached this to a tree. I don't think I've ever had this on a fence post to get a shot or anything like that. I've always had no issues at all getting my tripod in a position to capture the image that I was looking for. And I carried this around for a while. It's not the lightest thing in the world. And it is a little fiddly to mess with these legs and everything to kind of get it balanced. And then you get your camera on there, and it's really easy to get it top heavy and fall over. So I never really use this at all. So if you're looking to get something like this for your landscape photography, I would kind of think twice about how often you really need to get your camera in a tree or on a fence post or in just a really, really awkward position. So it's just something that I never really had to do very often. So I would probably pass on that. And coming in at number 1, and this is hands down the most expensive piece of gear, coming in at $899 is what I paid for this, but it's a drone. This is the Mavic Pro, not the new one. This is the one, I guess the original one. It's a fantastic drone, and I've had a couple of different drones before, and I've never used really any of them. I find that the places that you can fly a drone nowadays are so limited, and if anybody sees you flying a drone, they just kind of look at you like, what is that guy doing? Oh, he's a drone guy out there. So if you get a lot of odd stares, but I never really use drones a whole lot. I know some people that it's critical for what they're doing if they make a lot of videos or movies or things like that. But I went through a phase where I was really into aerial landscape photography, but honestly, I just never pull these out anymore. And like I said, this is the second drone I purchased. I spent over $1,000 for both with all the gear and everything that goes with them. And I just never use any of them. I haven't turned this one on in probably over a year now. So, or maybe not quite a year, but it's been a long time. And I just think that there's better ways to spend close to $1,000 than purchasing a drone for landscape photography right now. So those are the 7 things that I think that if you're looking to purchase a couple things for the holidays for the landscape photographer in your life, and you might want to skip over some of these things. These are the things that I purchased, and they didn't really solve any particular problem for me, and they are things that I just really never used. So I really wish I could get all the money back for all of this stuff because I could put it towards something that I would really use a lot in the future. So I do hope you enjoyed this week's video and you were able to get some helpful information out of it. And as always, any questions that you might have, please leave those in the comments section below, and I guarantee I will get back in touch with you. And if you did enjoy this week's video, if you could give it the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And as always, I really do appreciate you watching this week's video, and I will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.